I never imagined I would be telling this story, not because it's too painful, but because even now, a part of me still hopes it was all just a terrible dream. When I met Andrew, it wasn't fireworks or sweeping movie moments. It was steady. Safe. Like finding the one place in the world where your heart could finally rest. We met at a friend's cookout. He offered me a drink. I said no because I hated beer, and he smiled that gentle, almost boyish smile of his and said, "Good. More for me." That was Andrew. Silly. Warm. Uncomplicated. We dated for a year before he proposed, not with a big show, but in the middle of my living room while we were folding laundry. He slipped a simple silver band onto my finger and said, "Let's make a life, you and me. Nothing fancy. Just real." And that's exactly what we had. Real love. We didn't have a lot of money. We rented a small house, always slightly in need of repairs, and drove cars that coughed whenever we hit a pothole. But there was laughter. There were late-night talks. There was comfort. It wasn't perfect. He worked long hours as a construction manager. I managed a bookstore. There were arguments about bills, about how tired he always seemed, about the hours we barely saw each other. But we loved each other. And for me, that was enough. Or so I thought. Looking back now, there were signs, tiny cracks in our little world that I ignored because love made me blind. His sudden mood swings. The phone calls he wouldn't answer when I was in the room. The way his brother Mark would linger a little too long at family gatherings, making jokes that felt a shade too intimate. But I was in love. Blind, stupid, loyal love. I didn't know it then, but life was quietly rearranging itself behind my back, setting the stage for a betrayal so deep it would shatter everything I thought I knew. And it would begin. With death. It started with a phone call. I was closing up the bookstore late one rainy Thursday night when my phone rang. I remember the way my heart jumped when I saw Andrew's name. But it wasn't Andrew on the other end. It was Mark. His voice was low, almost choked. "Come quick," he said. "It's Andrew. It's bad." I don't even remember how I got to the hospital. I just remember the sterile smell, the harsh fluorescent lights, the nurse who met me at the door with sorrow already written across her face. They led me into a small, cold room. And there he was. Andrew. My husband. My best friend. Lying so still, so silent, the vibrant soul I'd loved seemingly. Already gone. The doctor told me words I didn't hear, something about an accident at the site, a fall from a scaffold, massive internal injuries. There was nothing they could do. He had been alive just long enough to whisper 2 words before slipping away. Tell her. No one knew what he wanted to say. No one could finish the sentence he never got to complete. And it haunted me, still haunts me to this day. I sat by his bed for hours that night, holding his cold hand, whispering every memory I could think of into the silence. Telling him everything I wish I'd said more often. How proud I was of him. How much I loved him. How empty the world felt without him breathing in it. When I finally left the hospital, it was just after dawn. I stepped into the gray morning, feeling like a ghost of myself. Andrew was gone. And with him, the life I thought I had. But I didn't know. The nightmare was just beginning. The days that followed were a blur. Funeral arrangements. Family members flying in. Tears I didn't know I could shed. Mark was there through it all, too much, actually. He stayed late at my house. Insisted on driving me everywhere. Sat a little too close. Looked at me a little too long when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I chalked it up to grief. We were all broken. We all needed comfort, right? But the morning of Andrew's funeral, the world stopped. The service was beautiful, soul-crushingly beautiful. I stood there in a black dress, clutching a photo of my husband, as they lowered his casket into the ground. As dirt thudded heavily against the wood, something inside me shattered. Afterwards, family and friends gathered at my house for the wake. Everyone brought casseroles, hugs, whispered condolences. But I didn't want any of it. I just wanted Andrew. Late into the night, after everyone had trickled away, I sat on the porch, staring into the dark. That's when Mark came out, 2 glasses of whiskey in his hands. He sat beside me, silent for a long while. Then he turned to me, eyes red, voice shaking, and said something that ripped the world out from under me. "Marry me." I thought I hadn't heard him right. I blinked at him, numb. But he repeated it, this time with a trembling hand reaching out to touch mine. "Andrew would have wanted you to be taken care of. We can heal together." I pulled my hand away like it burned. I didn't know what was more horrifying. That he thought it was appropriate to propose hours after burying his brother. Or the unsettling gleam in his eye when he said it. It didn't feel like grief. It felt like ownership. Possession. I mumbled something about needing air and rushed inside, heart pounding so loud it hurt. I should have seen it then. I should have known there was more. But I was too shattered to think straight. And I had no idea that Andrew had left me something that would shatter every illusion I still had. Something Mark never wanted me to find. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's face, those desperate eyes, that trembling voice. "Marry me." It echoed in my skull like a curse. Around 2 a.m., I got up and wandered aimlessly around the house. Everything still smelled like Andrew. His cologne. His books. His half-finished projects. I ended up in the study, his favorite place. Stacks of papers cluttered his desk, just as he had left them. His favorite leather chair was still pulled out, waiting for him. I sat down, running my fingers over the wood. That's when I noticed something wedged between the pages of a thick law textbook. An envelope. My name was written on it in Andrew's handwriting. I froze. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, dated 2 weeks before his death. It started simple. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And I need to tell you things I should have said sooner." My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Andrew confessed things. Things I never knew were happening behind my back. He talked about Mark. He wrote about how Mark had always been jealous of his success, his marriage, even his happiness. He said he'd overheard Mark talking to someone about taking over everything Andrew had someday. He wrote about strange financial discrepancies he had noticed and how he was preparing to make changes to his will to protect me, just in case. Tears blurred my vision. But it wasn't just a letter. Folded inside was a copy of a document from his lawyer. It was a transfer of assets. All to me. The house, the savings, everything. Mark wasn't supposed to get a single thing. And Andrew had specifically instructed the lawyer to give me the original documents if anything ever happened to him. I felt sick. Suddenly, all of Mark's suffocating attention made sense. The proposal. The urgency. He wasn't grieving. He was hunting. I clutched the papers to my chest, sobbing so hard my ribs hurt. Somewhere deep inside me, a fire ignited. I had to leave. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Because if Mark was willing to propose hours after Andrew's death, what else was he capable of? I had always thought that grief, when it came, would feel different. I imagined I'd be lost in memories, mourning the life I had lost, clinging to the pieces of the man I loved. Instead, all I felt was cold, as if I had been struck by a thunderbolt of clarity. The letter from Andrew was my lifeline, my wake-up call. I knew, without a doubt, what I had to do. But even as the realization hit me, another part of me struggled. Mark was family. He was my family. For years, we had been close. He was always there when Andrew and I argued or when I just needed someone to talk to. He knew everything about me. Too much, it seemed. I took the letter and the documents and locked them in my safe, before grabbing my purse. I needed to leave before I lost my nerve. I threw a few clothes into a bag and scribbled a quick note to the housekeeper, telling her I'd be out for a while. When I opened the door, Mark was standing there. His dark eyes seemed softer today, his voice quieter. He wasn't demanding anymore, just pleading. "Where are you going?" His voice was low, but there was a trace of desperation I hadn't heard before. I knew it was the last chance for him to reel me back in. "I need some time, Mark." I didn't look at him. I couldn't. After everything. I just need to process it all. I need space. But he wouldn't let it go. Stepping forward, his hand landed on my shoulder, and I felt that sickening feeling I'd felt when we were younger when he'd comforted me with just the wrong kind of touch. His grip tightened slightly, urging me to stay. "Don't go. Not like this." He stepped closer. "We can get through this together. You and me." I stepped back, breaking free from his hold. A wave of nausea hit me as the pieces began to fall into place. Andrew had been right. Mark wanted everything. And now, he wanted me. "I can't, Mark. I can't do this anymore." My voice was firm now, as the weight of my decisions pressed down on me. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing, and I saw the flicker of something dark pass over his face. "What are you talking about?" His voice cracked, but the words felt hollow, venomous. "Don't turn your back on me. Not now." "I'm not turning my back on you," I said. "I'm walking away because I see you now." I backed away from him, heading toward the door. He didn't stop me, but his silence spoke volumes. His words were no longer filled with pleading. They were filled with threat. As I closed the door behind me, my heart pounded with fear and clarity. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. Not here. Not in that house. Not around him. I didn't know what Mark would do next, but I wasn't about to wait around to find out. I drove aimlessly for hours, not really knowing where I was heading. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that refused to settle. The pain of losing Andrew still felt fresh, raw, but it was the realization of his brother's betrayal that stung the most. I had trusted Mark, trusted him more than I had trusted anyone in my life, and now, it felt as if the ground beneath me had crumbled away. I eventually pulled into a small, quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. I needed a break. I needed to breathe. I walked in and sat at the corner table, the kind that allowed me to see the door, but not be seen. The warmth of the place was comforting, but it couldn't thaw the icy weight in my chest. I stared out the window, my fingers nervously tracing the edge of the coffee cup, and I thought about the letter from Andrew's lawyer. The words burned in my memory. "You deserve better than this, Clara. You deserve a future filled with love, free from the shadows of betrayal." My phone buzzed, shattering my thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. "Clara, I need to talk to you. This isn't what you think. Mark is lying. Please let me explain." It was from my mother-in-law, Karen. I hadn't heard from her since the funeral. I read it again, feeling a sense of unease creep into my chest. What was she talking about? What could she possibly want to explain? Had she known? Had she been a part of it? I quickly typed back. "I don't want to talk to anyone right now. Please leave me alone." I set the phone down and rubbed my temples, fighting the urge to scream. "Clara?" I looked up in surprise, only to meet the familiar face of Lisa, my best friend. She was standing in front of me, concern written all over her face. "Lisa," I breathed, feeling a rush of relief. "How did you find me?" "Lucky guess," she said with a smile, sitting down across from me. "I know you too well. The minute I found out about Mark's little stunt, I figured you'd be somewhere like this." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, I'm not exactly in the mood for company." "I get it," she said, her tone softening. "I'm sorry." But you've been through so much, Clara. And this? This is just the beginning of your journey. What you decide now will shape everything. I don't know what to do, Lisa. My voice cracked as I leaned in, lowering my voice. I feel lost, angry, betrayed. And I don't even know how to grieve anymore. How can I, when the person I trusted the most, Mark, was waiting to take everything from me? Lisa reached out, taking my hand in hers. Her touch was warm, grounding. You're stronger than you know, she said gently. But you have to choose, Clara. You have to choose who you're going to be from here on out. You're not just Andrew's wife. You're you. And you can decide what happens next. I barely slept that night. Even with Lisa's comforting words echoing in my mind, the weight of everything crashing around me was too much to bear. My heart ached for Andrew, my soul crushed under the betrayal that followed his death like a storm after a funeral. Morning crept in through the windows, and with it came the next blow. It started with a knock at the door, loud, insistent, almost angry. I froze. For a moment, irrational fear gripped me. But when I pulled the curtain aside, my blood turned to ice. It was Mark. I considered not answering. Pretend I wasn't home. But before I could move away, I heard him shout, his voice carrying through the thin air, I know you're in there, Clara. Open the damn door. Trembling, I cracked it open, leaving the chain latched. What do you want, Mark? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. He smiled, but it was all wrong, a tight, cruel smile. I'm here for what's rightfully mine, he said, pushing against the door slightly. Andrew's gone. And now everything he had comes to me. I blinked at him, stunned. You're sick, I whispered. He scoffed, running a hand through his hair. Spare me the drama, Clara. Hand over the keys, the deeds, the accounts. You can stay in the guest house if you want, I'm not heartless. I stared at him, disbelief clawing at my insides. This was his true face, the mask fully ripped away. You have nothing, I said, my voice shaking. Andrew left everything to me. Every single thing. For a moment, he looked stunned. Then rage boiled up, twisting his face into something ugly. You're lying, he barked. That's not possible. We were supposed to. He stopped himself, breathing heavily. But it was enough. In that stuttered confession, I understood. Mark had planned this long before Andrew died. He had been waiting, calculating, hungry for a life that wasn't his to take. You used him, I said, horrified. You used both of us. His eyes narrowed. If you think I'm going to stand by and let you walk away with everything, you're dead wrong. And with that, he turned and stormed off. The next few days were a blur. Anonymous threats. Slashed tires. Strange cars parked near the house. I knew Mark was behind it. I filed police reports, changed the locks, even bought security cameras. But still, fear haunted me like a shadow I couldn't outrun. It wasn't until late one night, sitting alone in the living room, that I realized how far he was willing to go. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Clara, stay inside. Cops are coming. Mark's been caught plotting something against you. It's serious. My heart slammed against my ribs. Moments later, sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights danced outside my windows. I watched, frozen, as two officers dragged Mark out of his car. His hands were cuffed behind his back. He was shouting, wild and furious, but it was over. Later, in the safety of the police station, I sat with a detective as he calmly explained. They found evidence, emails, text messages. Mark was planning to harm you, Clara. He couldn't accept that everything legally belonged to you. He felt cheated. His plan was to eliminate you, thinking he could somehow reclaim Andrew's estate afterward. I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. Why? I whispered. Why did it have to come to this? The detective leaned forward, a kind, tired expression on his face. Greed makes monsters of men. The next morning, the news broke. Mark's arrest was everywhere: headlines, social media, whispered conversations in the coffee shops. His reputation, what little remained of it, crumbled into dust. But I couldn't celebrate. There was no victory here. Only sadness. Loss. And an ache for a man I would never see again. Andrew. When it was all over, when the court hearings began and Mark's sentence was inevitable, I made my decision. I couldn't stay. Not in that house filled with memories. Not in that town where every street corner felt haunted. I needed to start over. For me. For the life Andrew had wanted for me. The house felt emptier with every passing day. I packed in silence, each item folded and boxed like a small funeral for a memory I couldn't bear to relive. Andrew's scent still lingered on his old sweaters. His laughter seemed to echo through the halls, a ghost of the life we should have had together. I couldn't stay. Not with the whispers. Not with the pitying glances. Not with the pain stitched into the very walls. I listed the house quietly. Through a private agent Lisa recommended no signs, no public announcements. Just a clean sale to someone who would never know the history that bled into the floors. When the papers were signed and the last box loaded into the car, I stood at the threshold one last time. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. Only a hollow ache as I whispered, "Goodbye, Andrew." I hoped no, I believed that somewhere, somehow, he heard me. 3 weeks later, I boarded a plane under a new name, with a one-way ticket clutched in my trembling hands. I wasn't running away. I was surviving. The city I chose was quiet, tucked away by the coast, oceans away from everything that had ever broken me. A place where nobody knew me as Andrew's widow. Nobody knew my story. Here, I was just another face blending into the streets. I rented a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it had a balcony overlooking the sea. At night, I would sit there, the salty breeze brushing against my skin, and wonder if I had made the right choice. I missed him. God, I missed him so much it physically hurt sometimes. Every sunset felt a little dimmer without Andrew by my side, without his hand reaching for mine. But little by little, life crept back in. I found a small job at a bookstore tucked between two cafes. I learned to smile again, small, cautious smiles that didn't quite reach my eyes, but it was a start. I met new people who didn't ask about my past, who didn't look at me with pity. Some nights, I even laughed a foreign, broken sound I barely recognized as my own. And yet, no matter how far I went, no matter how much time passed, I carried Andrew with me. In the quiet moments. In the way I locked the door at night. In the way I caught myself glancing at the empty side of the bed. In the whispered prayers I sent up to the stars. I didn't know if I would ever love again. Maybe I wasn't meant to. Maybe some loves are once in a lifetime. Maybe some souls are stitched so deeply into yours that moving on isn't about forgetting, it's about carrying them with you, like a hidden flame you guard quietly for the rest of your days. And so I lived. Quietly. Softly. Building a life out of broken pieces. And somewhere in the quiet hum of a new life, I found peace. Not the kind that wipes away the scars, no, those would always be part of me. But the kind that lets you breathe again. That lets you wake up each morning and find something, even something small, to be grateful for. They say true love doesn't exist, but I will say otherwise. Even with his last breath, I was still in Andrew's mind. I may never know the full story from his side, but what I do know is that I had always been in it. And that is enough for me. I will hold on to his love forever, no matter where life takes me. I was still Clara. Not the Clara that tragedy tried to destroy. Not the Clara Mark tried to erase. But the Clara that Andrew loved, strong, kind, resilient. And that was enough. It had to be.